Hello. Today is the second Sunday before Christmas, the third Sunday in Advent. There are 3 candles lit in the Advent wreath now, and we are continuing the story of Ishtar's Odyssey by Arnold de Treves, still following the star. And today's chapter is titled Two Rivers. 3 mornings later, just as the sun poked up over the mountains far to their right, the caravan came to the edge of a cliff and stopped. As tired and sleepy as they were, everyone in the caravan began talking and pointing. Leaving the camel pullers to tend the animals, they all rushed to the edge of the cliff and started shouting and singing and dancing. Ishtar pushed through the crowd to see over the edge and gasped. Below them, stretching as far as he could see, were green fields, lush stands of palm trees, and a river as wide as the caravan was long. Ishtar felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see his father behind him. "We have made it across the Dead Land, my son. From here on, our journey will be in comfort and ease." "No more millet?" Ishtar asked. Salamar smiled. "No more millet. At least until the return trip," he added. The camels were as anxious as anyone to get to the water, so Rasad decided they would take a few more hours to descend the cliffs and then camp next to the river. Once there, everyone, including Salamar and his brothers, plunged into the cool and refreshing waters. To their left, Ishtar could see the river empty into the Aksar Sea. To their right, he could see that the river really was 2 rivers that had joined. "What rivers are these?" he asked his father. Salamar looked upstream and said, "The one to the right is the Tigris, the one to the left the Euphrates. We shall have to cross them both." 2 mornings later, they reached a place where Rasad said the Tigris was shallow enough to cross, but the camels all stopped and refused to step into the water. "Watch now and learn," Kazim said to Ishtar. The caravan was all bunched up along the shore. At the front of the line, a camel puller pulled on the first camel's reins with all his might, but the camel refused to budge. At one point, the camel puller slipped and fell flat on his back in the mud. Everyone except the camel puller laughed. He got up and pulled even harder. Rasad went stopping to the front of the line and yelled at the camel puller. Ishtar couldn't hear the words, but guessed that Rasad was asking what the problem was. Finally, Rasad turned to the camel and, with his hands on his hips, yelled 2 words to the beast. Immediately, the camel stepped into the water and started across the river. "That is why he is Karvan-Salar," Kazim said. "Even camels obey his commands." Once the first animal was in, all the rest followed. "You see," Kazim said, "just like sheep. Camels hate the water, but they hate being left behind even more." Now, between the 2 great rivers, the caravan headed north, enjoying the cool breezes and cool grasses of this rich land. They began traveling half at night to follow the star, and half in the day to see the terrain in front of them. On one of those days, Ishtar saw a huge pile of rubble and some columns leaning into the sky as he practiced his horsemanship. He brought his horse next to his father's and Rasad's. "What is that?" he asked. "The ruins of Babylon," his father said. "Once a great city." Ishtar raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" "We Jews were conquered by Babylon when it was ruled by Nebuchadnezzar," Rasad said. "Then you Persians, led by Cyrus, conquered Babylon. Then our Jehovah conquered your Cyrus." Rasad laughed and seemed quite pleased with himself as he rode away, and Ishtar was surprised to see the Karvan-Salar so happy. Rasad is right, Salamar said. Cyrus was moved by their God to let the Jews go home to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Ishtar squinted at his father. This is starting to sound like a history lesson. Salamar just smiled and said, You asked. Yes, I did, Ishtar said glumly, and I am embarrassed I did not know these things. Perhaps you should punish my teacher of history. You are only 11 years old, Salamar answered. There are still one or two things you have yet to learn. Ishtar and everyone else enjoyed this part of the trip. They bought real food from local farmers. The first time Ishtar put fresh grapes in his mouth, he began to dance around and shout for the soothing taste of it. He repeated this dance threefold when he got his first taste of a koraka gusht, braised meat and vegetables spiced with za'atar, Ishtar's favorite. Za'atar made his mouth and tongue tingle. In only 2 more days they had reached the city of Seleucia, jutting out from the ground, flanked on 2 sides by the Tigris River and surrounded by trees. Seleucia was even more beautiful than Amaranth thought, Ishtar thought. And then he caught himself and thought, almost more beautiful. Inside the walls of the city, every street and boulevard was filled with people and animals of all types, just like Amaranth. Ishtar enjoyed going from booth to booth and talking to anyone who would listen. The people of the caravan spent a whole day in the city, eating foods from around the world, such as fresh almonds and peaches, buying supplies, replacing worn-out bags and blankets. Some watched entertainments like musicians from Byzantium or a Greek play. Salamar bought new clothes for all their household, and Varta was especially happy to have a new pot. The star did not appear that first night at Seleucia, nor the second, so the caravan was able to have a fine rest. The assassin Farad had been turned over to the local authorities. That night, as they sat quietly by the fire, Ishtar said, Father, the old man Farad who tried to kill me, he thought he was just doing right for his family, didn't he? Ishtar saw his father head nodding in the firelight. Yes, yes, he did, he said, but he went about it in the wrong way. Several more moments passed as Ishtar thought. Still, I hope they're not too harsh with him, he said. On their third day in the city, it began to rain, and soon everyone was huddled in their tents. Ishtar took refuge in the large tent of his father, but watched the rain and lightning from the open door flaps. It was then he overheard an argument between Salamar and Rasad. No, 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 said Rasad, his face red and covered in sweat. It is a foolish risk. We must travel the safe route, north through Aleppo. We will travel the way of the star, Salamar said forcefully, but I am certain it will take us through Palmyra. Ishtar wandered over next to his father. What are you fighting about? He asked. We're not fighting, Salamar said, ignoring the breach of etiquette. We are discussing. But this... Salamar pointed at Rasad but did not finish the insult. What is the disagreement? Ishtar asked. Salamar drew a deep breath and then forced himself to calm. Rasad is insisting that we travel north through the city of Aleppo and then west and back south along the seashore. It is a pleasant route, full of green grass and blue waters, but it will take a month longer, he finished, looking sternly at Rasad. Well, that's ridiculous, Ishtar said, and what is the way you propose? I am insisting that the star will take us a short way north and west to the oasis of Palmyra, and then south and west to Galilee. It is not such a pleasant route, but it will cut a month off our travel. Ishtar shrugged. Oh, he said, that makes sense. And then he walked away. By this time the sun had set and the rain had stopped. but clouds and lightning still filled the sky. The tent felt small and confining, which was strange, since until the caravan trip he had always hated being outdoors. So Ishtar decided to go for a walk in the fresh evening air. Kazim and Yazdan followed as he walked along the river bank, which smelled a little like fish. As he turned away from the water, Ishtar looked to the sky and gasped. The clouds parted just slightly, and only for a moment, but in that moment he saw the stars. Ishtar stared for a moment and then quickly looked down to the horizon and noted the landmarks. Then he ran for his father's tent while Kazim yelled at him to slow down. In moments he reached Salamar's side, panting. I saw the star, he said, gasping for air. Excellent, Salamar said. In what direction? I shall have to show you, Ishtar answered. It is not a direction I have seen before. Ishtar dragged his father, uncles, and Rasad back to that spot by the river. He looked for his landmarks as he'd been taught, and then pointed into the sky. There, he said. Ishtar felt his father slump slightly next to him and heard all the others gasp. No, it cannot be, Rasad sputtered. May the gods have mercy on us, Uncle Jodhpur wheezed. What? Ishtar said, what is it? Salamar dropped to one knee and looked Ishtar in the eye. Ishtar, are you certain you saw the star there? Are you certain it was the same star? Of course, Ishtar answered, as if Salamar had asked if the sun rises in the morning. I saw the star there, and it was the correct star. Ishtar saw a look of doubt on Rasad's face, and then on the faces of his uncles. Salamar only sighed. Then that is the direction we must go, he said. He looked at all the others. My son is well educated, he is intelligent, and he is truthful. He is also a prince of Persia. If he says he saw the star there, then I believe him. We shall leave at once and travel through the night. With that, all discussion was closed, and the others left to start preparations. Father, why is everyone so upset? Ishtar asked. Salamar turned to his son. Because the star is taking us on a very dangerous journey, he said. The star is taking us into the wilderness of death. God reminds us in Isaiah 55 that his way of thinking about things and doing things is not the same as ours. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Where we think small and limited thoughts, he thinks grand and audacious thoughts. Where we see only the immediate results of an event, as if we were seeing just the first domino in a line, he sees exactly how every domino will fall. When Cyrus conquered Babylon, the Jews who lived there, because they'd been captured, were probably afraid of what this new king would do. But God had greater ideas. He knew where it would lead, and soon Cyrus had been so moved by God that he allowed the Jews to go home to Jerusalem and honor him. It was like that when Jesus was born too. Not many people really understood what was going on. They expected Jesus to act in certain ways, but God's ways were surprising. It's like that for the caravan now, as only Ishtar knows for certain that the star is really leading them. And it's like that for us, when the future looks scary and we don't know what's going to happen. The point here seems clear. We need to trust God, no matter how dark the future looks, even if we don't understand.